Hi, everyone. Welcome to What in the World is Happening, a show about Maitreya, the world teacher, and the masters of wisdom. We broadcast live every Saturday on Zoom and Facebook Live. And at the end of every episode, we do a meditation called Transmission Meditation. It's a great way to help the world. We hope you can stick with us and try that out. We'll do about a half-hour meditation at the end of the program. Today's topic is the awakening of humanity. The last few weeks, we've talked about the crises that humanity is facing globally and some of the possible solutions. So today we'd like to continue on with humanity's response to some of these crises, some great grassroots movements, larger movements, ways that humanity is waking up to these problems and finding new innovative ways to deal with them. And of course, we will talk about the masters of wisdom, who they are, and how they can inspire humanity at this time. So my name is Tim Boutskis. I'm broadcasting from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. And with me is Sabina Qureshi. Hi, Sabina.
Hi, Tim, and hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, and we have Silito and John doing our tech support. So if anyone has questions or would like to make comments during the show, please feel free to do so. And Sabina and I will try and address them during the show. So very exciting. So we'll talk about the awakening of humanity.
It's really an exciting topic because it includes all of us. And it's something that we can see in our communities, in our neighborhoods, everywhere around us. Probably most of you will remember back in I think it was back in the 80s or 90s when this phrase first became used, think globally, act locally. And it was kind of a new idea at the time because I think that was just the beginning of the internet. And so the feeling of being connected to the whole world in real time was still very new. And so the concept that you could be thinking globally and acting locally and know that you had, colleagues or other people around the world who were thinking in the same way and acting where they were locally, that was still pretty new. But the thing is, it's just taken off over the ensuing decades. And now what we found this week when we were preparing the show was that the number of initiatives and projects taking place across the world where people are working to improve lives is just, it's astronomical. It's so large that, I mean, you could spend all day, every day reading up about these different projects and you wouldn't come to an end because there are new groups forming all the time, new projects being started, taking off the ground all the time. So it's a fascinating time to be alive right now.
It really is. It's really amazing, all of these movements surfacing and working off of each other. And the large movements would start maybe in one country or one nation and like a domino effect around the world. So, and of course, with the introduction of, not introduction, but with some of these global crises, the recognition of our oneness and that these crises are affecting everyone, there's that as well. So people are really tuning in to and resonating with each other's lives and how they address problems. So these were some of the crises we talked about last week. Some of the major ones, of course, the environmental crisis, the humanitarian, economic, political, health, and spiritual. So we wanted to talk about a few of the neat initiatives in each of these crises. So we could start with the environmental.
Right.
There's, yeah. Some movements, one in Arizona, in Tucson, Arizona. Of course, it's a climate emergency right now. And so we've seen around the world, there are many places that have actually called, they've made commitments to zero carbon emission and so on. And some areas that have called for a climate emergency. Tucson was one example. And it was the work of an individual, very grassroots, who started to collect rainwater, Brad Lancaster. He would collect rainwater from the roofs, called sweet water, and would use it for basically everything that you would use the potable water for. And it was a way to save, because they'd have a lot of dry spells, and to pipe water in from 300 miles away. The rivers were starting to, the Colorado River was starting to deplete because of the demand. And Tucson, was one of the areas that called for an emergency, right? So he started doing this, and he would also cut curbs. They have the curbs along the walks that would repel the stormwater, right? The rainwater that goes along the street.
And also around like little, like, you know, when you have like a small triangular area in, say, where there's an intersection of three roads, or a little circle where there's a traffic circle, in those kinds of areas as well, you've always got like the curb around it, right?
right, with like some shrubbery and like a little green space as well, right? And he would cut the curbs so that the rainwater would just funnel in and water
Yeah,
the
the
shrubs.
storm runoff, basically.
That's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so when he first did it, it wasn't really legal in that area. But they
Wasn't legal
realized
at all, no.
it wasn't legal. So, but they realized the advantage of it, of course, saving lots of that water that they would have to pipe in, using the rainwater to water trees and increase the canopy of trees and growth. And so it became legal to do that. And in fact, now they do that all over the place and integrated it into their planning.
Well, and in this article that we were reading, they say that about 1,600 trees have been planted since then across his neighborhood, and they've cut dozens of curbs. Like it's an ongoing thing.
So it's become a green streets policy, I think, and they in fact have they have a small charge for the rainwater for people's use of it to sort of fund the infrastructure for that. So they found that to be a great contributor to solve that problem.
And what's neat is that it all started with one person. I mean, that's kind of mind-boggling. And apparently he collects enough, his rainwater collection meets 95% of his water needs. That's amazing. In a place like Tucson, which really doesn't have a lot of rainfall. I think they were giving us statistics in this article, like, I can't remember if it was like 12 inches of annual rain. That's like the average rainfall there.
Yeah, that's right.
Really. But the interesting thing is Indigenous people, already going back in time, that is something that they were doing. I mean, that's something that is part of their legacy or heritage there. They say here that the need for irrigated farmland was what first led Indigenous tribes in Arizona to capture summer monsoon rains. So it's not a new idea again, but here we are updating it, right? And
and
putting it
working
into practice.
as they always have, working with the environment, not against it, right? Ways to work with it, looking at ways to alter what is right now in our infrastructures in order to work more in tune with the environment. And well, like this other example in Paris, in France, with the geothermal, you know, most people for heat, they use a boiler system. For hot water, it actually contributes in the States anyways to about 40% of your carbon emission, or 42%. So it takes a lot with natural gas to heat the water. France has made a commitment, of course, to reduce on the emissions and have been integrating this geothermal program, I believe called district energy distribution, or district or direct energy system. Yeah. And it's, and it reduces costs, and they dig deep into the ground to pull out naturally heated water. So it's already warm where the source is.
Because it's heated by the Earth's own heat.
By the Earth's heat.
It's hot. Yeah.
And it pulls it up and then pipes it to individual homes and buildings and whatnot. So then you do not have to use your boiler to or hot water tank to heat up the water. So there's a great savings there. They're integrating it into the existing boiler system so that, you know, for part of the season when it's more, you know, it's cooler and you do have to maybe heat it a bit, the boiler can kick in and just supplement a little bit of that heat. But for the large part, heat and cold water too can be piped in without that necessary, or that it's no longer necessary to heat that water using the boiler, and reducing your emissions. And so in Paris, they've integrated the system, you know, find certain key areas where they dig down to that source and then pipe it through the city.
That's right. Because they found there were 3 places in France, in fact, where that type of geothermal heat was available or possible to be dug down to. And one of them is in this area, the Parisian Basin. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's amazing is also there's a savings, like a cost savings of 5%, which is not a whole lot, but in terms of carbon uh, how much carbon is being taken, or sorry, yeah, taken out of the environment, put into the environment. That's where the real difference is. It's 4 times the difference. So it's a really big change. I mean, that's a huge difference.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we have a quote here from Greta Thunberg, of course, when we're talking environment. She has the best. It feels like we've passed some kind of social tipping point where people are starting to realize that we cannot keep looking away from these things. We cannot keep sweeping these things under the carpet, these injustices. People are starting to find their voice, sort of understand that they can actually have an impact. And of course, that's key when we're looking at environment and all of these problems. If we look at it directly and start to work on it, and we develop the will, people are starting to find their voice. With all these crises, I think there's definitely from these examples, people sort of taking a part of that responsibility and finding power in their voice.
And I'd like to say we have a listener in South Sudan, Juba. Cosmos, welcome. And we're glad you could join us. Wonderful to have you.
Welcome. Yeah, thanks.
That's you're across the world, but we're all united in this goal that we all share, making lives better and doing it together. It's the only way we can do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
These are great as far as humanitarian crises. Food, of course, starvation would be a huge humanitarian crisis. So many people have not got access to food around the world from armed conflict, from the wrong distribution of resources. We need to work towards a much more equitable distribution of resources. And one example of this in the States is it used to be called Feeding Children Everywhere, and they've just changed their name to U.S. Hunger. And it's a food bank service that delivers food to the doorstep. They were a food bank, but they started this full cart program just before COVID hit, where they would deliver boxes or packaged food to the doorstep. For the dignity of the person, if somebody was maybe reticent about coming to the food bank for food, this way they could retain their dignity. It's discreet. Food is delivered to your doorstep. Originally, it was low cost, but as soon as COVID hit, they switched to a free delivery, free food program. So people who needed food, who didn't have enough money to put food on the table, could order food, and it would be delivered discreetly to the doorstep. And during the pandemic, of course, it was much more safe as well. And the program expanded and now delivers food across 50 states. They're now at about 113,000 home deliveries is what they're up to. So it's a wonderful initiative to deliver food, to get food to people who need it safely and discreetly and with dignity. In fact, one of the people working in it used to work with corporate banks executives and how they were treated. They wanted to treat everybody that same way, as that level of treatment. So for example, if you got a box of food, there was some mix up and you didn't get your food delivery, they would deliver a new box of food plus a free gift card as an apology for the inconvenience.
So treating people like valued customers. I mean, unfortunately, in our capitalist world, we're always using words like client, customer. I mean, even in healthcare now, people talk about a client, not a patient. But it's a good parallel from corporate banking to a food bank to say we're going to treat people as valued customer, as a valued person. We're going to value people, basically. Yeah,
it's an excellent initiative. And you said they were delivering to Puerto Rico as well, correct?
That's right. Well, they've been able to, they have distribution centers throughout the US, and therefore the cost of sending food is really low because of that. So they're able to reach the whole country and Puerto Rico at a reasonable cost. They have distribution centers in places like Chicago, Dallas, Utah. Their headquarters are in Orlando. So they really have a huge network. I mean, this is a big operation. And in fact, where we found this was on something called foodbanknews.org, which is an incredible website full of different projects, different types of food bank initiatives across the US. Now, this is all American, and I'm sure there are groups across the world in other countries working as well on these types of ideas. But what's really interesting is just to see how much people are doing. Really, there's so much activity. It's fantastic.
Well, this is a call out to Jeff Bezos. You could make it international
Well, in
overnight.
fact, they did in fact reach out to Amazon, because they thought, well, why can't Amazon also be distributing food, right? For
Exactly.
food bank. But they didn't get any response. Not surprising.
There's still a chance. Come on, Jeff. Wonderful initiative. There's another one here, replacing guns with jobs in Chicago, right?
Yes, this initiative is in Chicago. Yeah.
And this was the Arne Duncan, the education secretary for Obama, for the Obama administration. When he moved back to Chicago, he started bringing this program forward called CRED, which is Create Real Economic Destiny. So turn your street cred into real cred is the slogan. And it really is more of a, what he said, more of an economic problem than a crime problem. And so the way the program works is it's a street outreach. So it's proactive, coordinated efforts with police, community groups, and various departments. They get out there to sort of, through street outreach, to interrupt violence in real time, and also to offer alternatives, it pays for counseling, high school diplomas. It's tied to 40 different Chicago companies so that jobs can be created. So it's ways to get job training brought forward, so that there are real alternatives to violence in the streets. And
because
guns.
in fact, what people who do outreach into areas where there is a lot of violence have found, I mean, he started this by going in and talking to kids on the street and saying, how much money would you need to stop doing this sort of thing? Like, what would it take if it was just about money? Like, how much would you want? Or what would we need to pay you? How much money would it take for you to put down the guns? And the answer was really what surprised him. These children were saying, if I could get a legal job that paid just $12 or $13 an hour, which is less than Chicago's $14 an hour minimum wage, then these men and children said they would put down their guns and turn away from this life. So that is not a lot of money. And that's them wanting to be a contributing member of society and be part of what everyone else is doing. And so that seemed like a really kind of a no-brainer, like, wow, we can do this, right?
Yeah, it's a wonderful initiative. And I think their initial statistics of the shootings have dropped 33% in the areas that they've worked.
That's right. That's right. And in fact, it's very, the contrast is extreme, because shootings were going down in general, like year upon year, but with COVID, they went back up everywhere else, like by about 51%. However, in the neighborhood where CRED is operating, they continued to drop by 33% in 2020. So that's a huge marker of how effective this is.
Very effective.
Yeah. And in fact, the article that we were reading is written by a journalist who published this in the Philadelphia Inquirer. And so she was actually focusing on how this model should be used in Philadelphia as well. Sorry, the Philadelphia Citizen, not Inquirer. And so, because they have the same problems in Philadelphia. I mean, in many places, it's not just Chicago, right? So in terms of the money, how much it costs, this is where you really see the difference. The police budget in Chicago, for example, $1.76 billion. How much did CRED work with? $10 million. That was their yearly budget. Wow. So that's like the police department has 175 times as much. And it wouldn't take much more to really get a program like CRED off the ground. Not much at all. And especially, this is something interesting as well, talking about defunding the police, for example. The Arne was asking for $50 million more to give to CRED, saying that, if we had that, we could really expand. And so just to give a measure of kind of perspective here, that would be a very small amount, because you could, if you wanted to bring cred to all 14 of Chicago's most violent neighborhoods, he says it would cost 150 to 200 million a year. And you could find that money. He's already done the work to find out how. If you reduce the Chicago Police Department staff by about 1,000 officers. As of late September last year, the department had 846 vacancies. So it's doable, definitely, in terms of the money, but what's required is the political will. However, I think that's something it's coming, because as people see these results, they're going to say, well, wait, why aren't we doing this, right?
That's right. The voice will increase, the will increase from these all these initiatives.
Right.
That makes sense. And this is great, Savini, about ending world hunger.
That's right. This is something that, well, it's just something that's kind of amazing if you start writing into your search bar, all of you can do this, just start writing into your search bar, how much would it cost to, that's what I did one day when I was trying to find out what are the estimates for ending world hunger compared to how much we spend, for example, on the military globally. So I just wrote that down. How much would it cost to? And the first suggestion that came up that Google gave me was end world hunger. I thought, well, is that just because Google knows me and they think, well, she wants to know that? So I asked friends and family to do the same thing. And of course, you could say, well, all your friends and all your family also have the same thoughts. So that's why Google gave them that suggestion. But I say no. This is because of the number of people who are putting in this search question. And we did this on numerous browsers and different people. So I've just put a little montage up here on the screen. And you can see the first one is how much would it cost to end world hunger? Next, you've got build a house. Then you've got, like, depending on where it was done, which country, for example, you've got end homelessness or build a garage or anywhere. So, but it just goes on. But the first one is ending world hunger. So that just shows where people's minds are. And you may not be hearing people doing a project, well, you will be, you do see projects, but what I'm trying to say is that the number of people who are thinking about something is far greater than the number of people we may see in action. But those thoughts and that energy of thought, that turns into political will at a certain point, and that becomes action. So it's a very straight line from one to the other. And I think that's what we're seeing around the world these days.
People are thinking of the future, creating it. And what's the answer to end world hunger?
Well, it's a very simple.
It's a range.
No, but the basic answer is sharing the world's resources, because we know that we produce 10% more food than is needed by the people of the world. So we've got enough food. That's not the issue. It's the distribution of the food. And because food production is an economic activity based on the idea of profit, therefore those who produce the food, instead of simply distributing it where it's needed, they want to get the right price. It's all based on money and market forces. And so there's a lot of food that is held back in order to create a demand and a scarcity for food. And that food that's held back often goes to waste. It often rots and it can't be used because it's been held back until the point where it rots. So it's really just our own stupidity that leads to this problem. It's not because there's any real issue. I mean, it's a man-made problem, in fact.
We're not sharing adequately. The nations aren't redistributing the supplies adequately. And then the cost is a range, right, of up to $280 billion or something to feed the world.
Well, I think, I'm not sure if we've got that in the next slide, but I think that when I did look it up, and that's a couple of months ago, I think it came out at $330 billion.
330 billion, yeah.
Yeah, okay, this was military expenditure. Yeah.
Just as something to look at, I think 2 trillion for 2021, wasn't it? So a huge budget on military worldwide.
Well, what I had was almost, almost 2 trillion, if that's 2,000 billion. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. But what's interesting is to see how it's decreasing. Starting in 1960, when these amounts were first tabulated and measured
Yeah.
globally across the world, you can see that there's a steady decline. I mean, sometimes it goes up momentarily, but then it just keeps going down.
Yeah.
I know it's gone up in the last couple of years a bit, but I expect this trend to continue because this just shows that people are aware that that's not the solution. I mean, that's not the way that we're going to solve our problems by
Yeah.
fighting. It doesn't work. And we've got a comment from John, our chat show, who's just saying, just to mention that defunding the police means sending non-police, non-gun wielding people to help in situations where guns are not needed. And another area where I just read about this in the news, I think yesterday or today, in the question of homelessness in San Francisco, there's an initiative precisely to do this in, I think, many other cities as well, but the article I read was about San Francisco. And they were talking about the fact that uh, the problem with sending people who are wielding guns to solve a problem like someone phones the police because there's a homeless person sleeping in a tent on the sidewalk in front of their house and they don't like that. The response by police who are wielding weapons is usually a violent response. And so people who are homeless actually have a very high risk of encountering violence on through the police. I mean, not from other people who are non-police, but actually the police themselves are the source of the violence. So, yeah, it makes sense that we move away from using arms, not just in military conflicts, but also on our streets, right?
Yeah. Use a little bit of that military budget to end world hunger.
Right. Wouldn't take much. We've got, I think, the next slide here with killingry and livingry. These are words that Buckminster Fuller, the architect who invented the geodesic dome, he came up with these words to describe how much we spend on killing each other and how much we spend on helping people to live. Now, here in livingry, I've just put down how much it would cost, the estimate to end world hunger. But you could add in healthcare if you wanted, and it would still be a very small amount compared to how much we spend globally on arms. But
Yeah.
just these two numbers here, we're spending about 175 times as much to kill each other as we are to help each other live. So it's clear there's a real imbalance there.
We flip those around. What a
Right.
world. So the problems of mankind are real but solvable. The solution lies within your grasp. Take your brother's need as the measure for your action and solve the problems of the world. There is no other course. So this is a quote from Maitreya, the world teacher, who we're going to talk about. He's the master of the masters of wisdom. He's a great and wise elder who has evolved out of the human kingdom. Who is here now in the world to help humanity through this great time of transition. So these words are wonderful. It shows that everybody has a solution within their grasp. These problems are solvable. There is hope. And that's how we look. We look at our brother's needs. Wherever we are in our environment or around the world, have that as a measure for your action, that need that you see, and that will solve these problems.
Yeah, very, very profound words because they're so simple. It's not a complicated thought at all. And John, our chat show host, has just put a quote from Buckminster Fuller up, which is basically saying the same thing. Selfishness is unnecessary. And, well, this is how Buckminster Fuller's mind works, and henceforth unrationalizable. In other words, there's no rational need for selfishness. Our survival doesn't depend on it, in fact.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah.
Well, here's some economic crises responses. Fish heads in New Zealand. That's an interesting one. These are donations of fish heads from the fishing industry for those who don't have enough for food on the table, especially in the Maoris. For the Maoris, it's a chiefly food, correct? It's a
That's right.
very,
It's considered really high status and
yeah.
a delicacy. Yeah.
So to have some free fish heads that they could cook up is a huge delicacy. It would have been, I think they said 150
Dollars
New
for a meal
Zealand
for the
dollars
people.
to
That's
have a
right.
meal like that of fish heads. So it's a way of managing waste in the fishing industry, of course, because all of that would be thrown away and
That's right. But
redistribute.
apparently, in the fishing industry, generally, about 2/3 of what is caught is thrown out, and much of it is edible. Only a third is used because we fillet the fish. We only eat that part, and the rest is chucked. And what's interesting here is that this is as you were saying, it's also a recycling initiative. There's an organization called Legacy, Lega, and then CSEAC, and their focus is destructive fishing, like the effects of fishing that are destructive, and the underuse of the catch. And they give as an example Iceland, who is pushing to use 100% of their cod, what they catch. So what Legacy did was they created a group called Kaika, who distributes the fish heads. But it started with a boating club in Auckland, New Zealand, because at that boating club, people who went out fishing, when they came back in, they would fillet their fish and leave behind the rest, right? The heads, the skeleton, the skin, everything would just be sitting there. And so they ended up with this pile of rotting fish heads and skeletons and everything, and it was a problem. It was garbage. But instead of just throwing it into the garbage, some of the members of the boating club uh, contacted a Maori community hall nearby and said, "Could you use this?" And so the community hall said, "Yes, we can use the fish heads as food, and we'll use the rest of it as fertilizer." And so they started doing that. And before COVID began, they were distributing about 550 pounds every week of these fish heads to the community. And since COVID, it's 4 times as much. And so
Wow.
it's really, as we say, killing two birds with one stone. Though that sounds horrible. Why would you want to kill a bird anyway?
It's a very efficient way to do it, isn't it? A great redistribution of things, preserving the environment, feeding people who are hungry, and so on. Yeah. And of course, universal basic income we talked about last week as for the economic crises. Not a new concept. It was written about by Sir Thomas More in Utopia in 1516 and has been tried many times over the century. But there are lots, very recently, of course, it's really become a hot topic, mostly, I think, because of the pandemic, but also automation, I think, plays a role. People looking forward, thinking, well, if jobs are taken for automation or artificial intelligence, how do we set our social programs in such a way that people can make a living or have enough to survive? And so there's been a lot of talk about it and a lot of pilot programs in various areas around the world. Got a list here.
That's right. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting, I found an article, and we mentioned it last week in the Washington Post, which where some researchers were studying the lives of children. They wanted to do that over a 15-year period. And partway into the study, about a quarter of the kids suddenly had a change in their circumstances. These were the children of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians in North Carolina, and a casino had just been built there. And so suddenly the families of these children had an increase in their income. And so the researchers were able to track what happened as a result of that increase. And what they found was these children had a rise in two qualities that they identified as conscientiousness, which is, paying attention to details, following rules, that type of thing. Because apparently, if you don't have conscientiousness, it'll be that you have a tendency to break rules, to lie, to have trouble paying attention. And so it's obviously a quality that's very useful for your further life, right, as an adult. And the other quality was agreeableness, the ability to feel good around people, feel comfort with people, and an aptness for teamwork, because you enjoy people, you feel good about them, you don't feel insecure, anxious, afraid. And so this rise in income, which was not much, it was just about $4,000 across a year for one family. So that's not a huge amount of money, but it was enough that it had a profound effect on the lives of these children. So universal basic income has a lot of reasons for being something positive that would really impact people in a profound way.
Absolutely. I think it plays a part in all of these crises. People will have a bit more of a chance to creatively resolve problems, a bit more time, leisure time. They'll be able to work. It'll just give them a bit of a step up to tackle all of these things and
Well,
to
yeah,
live a
and
better life.
the insecurity that comes from not knowing if you have enough money to make it to the end of the month, the whole question of your inner mental equilibrium or emotional equilibrium, a lot of what causes people problems is that insecurity, is not knowing, not being able to feel calm and at peace because you're so concerned, because you really don't know, and in fact you may not have enough money.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, so many decisions made on survival that don't necessarily have to be there. You could use that elsewhere.
Absolutely.
And here's some initiatives we talked a little bit about last week as well with political crises. Grassroots, we call it trickle up, I think, going from regional
Right.
up to the larger instead of trickle down.
That's right. And what's interesting here is that very often when we think of politics, we think of the national or federal level, maybe the state level or provincial level, but we don't often focus on the municipal or city level. And yet that's really where hands-on work gets done a lot of the time. And so we thought these were really interesting examples that we mentioned last week as well. The roundtable sponsored by the Sanders Institute of Bernie Sanders, that took place a few years ago. But what was interesting was that the mayors of these four cities, Barcelona, San Juan, New York, and Stockton, they all had the same issues that they were dealing with in different forms. But it was all about making people's lives better in their cities, not allowing capitalism to just make everything so expensive that you would price people out of their own city, how to provide services. So sharing ideas and putting your heads together, it makes a lot of sense, because in each place you may have different particular situations or stories, but the results, the solutions can often be applicable across different places.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then this other one, the dialogue, if you just go back for a sec.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, the mayor's dialogue on growth and solidarity. This is a project that grew out of two mayors talking to each other, the mayor of Milan, Italy, and of Freetown, Sierra Leone. They both have a garment or clothing industry. I mean, we know Milan as a center of fashion. So they have links already through that economic activity, but they began talking and realized that they wanted to work together and to get other mayors on board as well to create a network to make their cities places of opportunity, places where young people can thrive, where mobility is a choice, and where newcomers can find a home. So with those four goals, they reached out to other mayors across Europe and Africa, and now this network includes more than 20 cities. So it's very inspiring to see this.
It is. Oh, it's a great movement.
Yeah. Well, and I'm thinking we may need to, we've got so much information here, we may need to move to kind of doing a two-parter. This particular slide, let's just stay on this for a sec, what you just had up there. Yeah. That one there, that's from the Pew Research Center. They talk to people in these different generations. We've given them names, the silent generation, boomer generation, Gen X, millennial, and Gen Z. But what's interesting is seeing the growth in the percent of each group who say government should do more to solve problems. And this is what is called an activist government, the idea that there is a need for government action to solve problems. So I think maybe we should leave it there and come back to this next week and now jump to what we like to connect all of this with. And that is what we briefly touched on earlier, Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom, people like ourselves who simply have evolved to a point where they are expressing the qualities of the soul 100%, all the way through themselves. We are expressing those qualities partially, not as fully. And what our information is that these great beings, the Masters of Wisdom, and Maitreya with them, who is the elder brother of that group, that they are now here to help us in this next stage of our growth. And so all these examples we've been giving are to talk about the fact that this next stage, or this process that we're seeing unfolding now, of people taking action and making real efforts to change the way our lives take place, that this is part of a great evolutionary process that we're all involved in. And it's also connected to a change of ages, change of astronomical age. That is, we are actually shifting our relationship energetically to a different constellation in the heavens, the constellation of Aquarius. Until now, we've been receiving great energies from the constellation of Pisces, and those energies have stimulated our individuality, our idealism and devotion, all necessary qualities, divine qualities in their own right. But the shift now is to qualities of synthesis, of working together, of group work, and of bringing ideals down to the ground and making them real on the ground. And this is something that we're seeing playing out. All of these stories we've told today about people's initiatives, different groups, all of this is an example of that. And we'll continue talking about other examples in a couple of weeks. But just to tie it in here and say that we are not alone. We have the help of our elder brothers and sisters. And wait, let's go back to the slide of the teachers. Yes, so we get our information from these authors who have written about this group of elder brothers, the Masters of Wisdom, and they've explained who the Masters of Wisdom are, what they have to say, their perspective on our lives, the human life on Earth. And these are authors you can find in any bookstore or library. The most recent, Benjamin Creme, is somebody that some of us knew as well while he was still alive. And he was actually a painter, an artist. That was his, what do you call that? His calling, his work. But he was as well a disciple of the Masters of Wisdom. And so he founded a magazine to publish this information more widely, make it more available. And the magazine is called Share International. We're not trying to promote it. We just want you to know that that's available as well as books. And so what all of these authors are talking about is that this help in the form of our elder brothers is something that right now is taking place in a different form. That is to say, the masters have always been here helping us, but from behind the scenes. And they have a responsibility to make sure that we, for example, that we don't blow ourselves up. Now, of course, they can't prevent it. If we're really bent on doing that, we have free will and we'll do it. Of course, they'd rather we don't. Most of us would rather we don't. But they've been trying to help all the time. It's not that this is a new thing. The difference, what is new, is that they're stepping forward to make themselves known publicly. And that what's also new is that we, humanity, are able now to understand who they are and to not be afraid of them and to work with them as co-workers, colleagues. And we will be doing that. They are returning to live on the physical plane in our cities. And so it's a real change in our perspective on our own lives and our place sort of in the scheme of things, to know that these great helpers are here and that we have their inspiration and guidance if we want it. Of course, they respect our free will. They will never impose anything on us. And it would be useless to do that anyway, because as anybody who has children knows, you can clean up your child's room for them. But if they don't know how to maintain that, it'll, the next day it'll look exactly as it was before. So it's something, the solving of our problems is something we have to do. And only we can really do it in the sense of making those changes permanent and real.
And as Sabina was saying, the Masters of Wisdom, they know intimately all that we're facing right now. They've been through it. They've been through the trials and tribulations. They know what it's like to evolve out of the human kingdom. So there is this evolutionary aspect. We are all evolving. We are all divine sparks in essence that are over many, many, many lifetimes developed to the point where we become a Master of Wisdom. And so, and as Sabine says, they're in the physical plane. So there are several Masters of Wisdom now in the physical plane at this time. They also know intimately about all the energies from Aquarius that are coming through in this change of ages. As we were talking about, all of our systems were set based on Piscean energy, and now we find they don't work for us anymore. We're having all of this this conflict and realizing that they're outdated, and that's because of all the Aquarian energies coming in. But the Masters of Wisdom are custodians of that energy too. They know how to distribute it. They understand the effects and humanity's response they can gauge. So they're here to inspire and help us, and as Sabina said, in full respect of free will, because we're growing. But from their vantage point, they can see quite a few things. And we have a quote here from the Master: gradually the good is gaining the upper hand in this age-old struggle for the minds and hearts of men. So from their viewpoint, they can gauge this and see this. Everywhere there are signs that the new is awakening in man,
Well,
a
and
new
what I
sense of
like is,
responsibility. And yeah,
sorry, I thought you had stopped. Just that the sentence where that quote comes from about there are signs that a new spirit is awakening, begins by saying ancient hatreds divide the peoples and lawlessness abounds. In other words, we still have problems, but everywhere there are signs that a new spirit is awakening. So what's really neat is that they can, it's not that they're looking at everything through rose-tinted glasses. They do see what's going on. It's not a skewed vision. It's a balanced vision. And
absolutely.
yeah, we have another hello from Anne Stone, who lives in Belgium, and she says that she's really happy with Share International magazine, which she receives. She's been receiving it since 1986. Imagine that.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us.
And did you just have that slide up about only through humanity itself can the divine plan work out?
Yes,
Yes.
that's our part. We have a part to play in this.
Right. Yeah, we have to do it. Exactly. Yeah, it's our job.
So working out the plan, the Masters are here to inspire and guide, but we do take the actions and we work it out. And with the Masters of Wisdom is Maitreya, the world teacher. We mentioned him earlier. He is sort of the most evolved out of the Masters of Wisdom. They would call him master or great teacher. And he's in the world as well in the physical plane to help during this time of transition. So as Sabina was saying, the Masters of Wisdom know all of the troubles we have as well. Maitreya's heart is with the suffering, with the starving. These are the priorities for him, and that we should take note of: the starving millions, war, all the suffers. His mind is in joy, but his heart suffers alongside with everybody. So he has a set of clear priorities for us to share the world's resources to resolve all of these problems. And he has decided to be on the physical plane himself to help with that time. So he's the head of the spiritual kingdom at the time, holds the position of the Christ. So he embodies love for the planet. So highly conscious and evolved being. An elder, though, you could imagine him as a great elder in your family, in the human family.
Although
So
apparently his physical appearance is of a relatively young man. Right? We've told that, but that's because their physical bodies for a master it's not correlated to their age, you know.
That's right. Yeah. In fact, Maitreya's body he created, called a Maya Varupa. It took 6 years to create the body to hold the level of consciousness. So he uses that body, but he can appear to many and has appeared to many all around the world in different guises as a familiar, in his, in inspiration, in visions, and so on.
And I just wanted to also welcome some other guests that we have today. Adrian Trotner from Sweden, Simon Kenda, I think from Slovenia, and Steen Kirsten. I'm not sure if you're from the Netherlands, and Sylvia, well, I don't know how to pronounce this, ZYZ.
Welcome.
I'm not sure how that name is pronounced. Welcome to everybody, and thank you for being here today. Yeah.
So, and Maitreya's here for everyone. He's also the awaited one in all the different religions, but he's here for everyone. You don't have to be of a particular religious background. He is the world teacher for all, but he is the Christ for Christians, the Messiah for the Jews, the Imam Mahdi, Krishna, Buddha, and so on, the awaited one.
Well, and what's amazing for me about Maitreya is that he, in his messages, because he gave, he transmitted telepathically through Benjamin Creme 140 messages, and he says that look for me in the dark places where hunger and poverty abound. I'm not maybe quoting that precisely, but what he's saying is that what his concern is the well-being of everybody, and so his first priority is sufficient and correct food and water. That is the most basic essentials for life. And for him, the fact that people are still not being nourished properly is a crime. He sees it as a crime. And he talks about love. He says, everyone has heard of love. We all know what love, the idea of love is, but we're clearly not expressing love, because if we were, everyone would have enough to eat. In one way, not making sure that everybody is nourished is like not loving. It's a lack of love, in fact. But his teaching goes beyond that. That's his first priority, but his teaching goes beyond that to what he calls the art of self-realization. It's not a new religion, but it's based on the fact that all of us are evolving all the time in consciousness, and that we continue this process lifetime after lifetime. And so the art of self-realization is about how to participate yourself in this process that's already happening in you, how you can use your awareness, your attention, your mind to be an active proponent of that process. And I think maybe this is a good moment to jump to transmission meditation, because that's how we're going to end the program today, is by doing a half hour of this meditation. And it's a very easy way to use your mind and your attention to participate in your own evolution, and at the same time to be of positive use to the world, to help in the work that the masters do. Yeah, let's look at that for a moment. Available for free download. These books are available. You can download them for free. One of them is about this meditation, transmission. And you'll also see one called The Awakening of Humanity, which talks about the very thing we're focused on today, how this process of awakening is taking place across the whole world. And so really, we welcome you to read the books. They're wonderful, very inspiring.
Yeah, they're great books. And of course, if you enjoy the transmission meditation, the book on transmission meditation is a great one to pick up, and it's free. Also, additional resources here. There's a website if you'd like to learn a bit more about Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom and changes in humanity. Share-international.org. There's some YouTube channels, Share International, some great videos and lectures there. And of course, as we were saying about downloads, there's some books and downloads at share-ecart.com. So feel free to check those out. And so transmission meditation, I'll just go back to our slide here. You don't have to believe in anything. It just works. How transmission meditation works is it's a form of service. It's a way that we can participate in helping the world, in bringing in these energies that we were talking about, the energies of Aquarius, great energies, solar energies, cosmic energies, healing energies to help the world, to help humanity. And what it does is it takes these great energies, because they go around and they bounce off most of us. They're very potent. We can't absorb them in that full potency. So what transmission meditation does is it steps down those energies to a usable level. So like a great transformer would transform electricity down to an outlet level, so you can use the outlet and plug in an appliance or something. So it's to work in cooperation with the Masters of Wisdom, who direct these energies through us, through our chakra system. It's a very safe meditation. They know exactly how much and what potencies to direct through the chakra system, to step it down and to help humanity. So it's great form of service. There's great growth in it because, of course, it stimulates the chakras and you grow as well from the process. It's done in groups, of minimum groups of 3. With the pandemic, of course, we've been doing Zoom transmission meditations. We find that's very effective. There are several links that we'll put up if you enjoy this experience and would like to try it again, or would like to just try it with a Zoom group. Please feel free to check out that and join with them, and they can explain a bit more about it. It's a very simple meditation. Anyone over the age of 12 can do it. It's non-denominational. It helps in any avenue of life.
Well, and one of the statistics that Benjamin Creme gave about this meditation is that if you do 1 year consistently of this meditation and do it correctly, you may advance in terms of your own evolution as much as you would after doing 10 to 20 years of other types of meditation. So it's extremely potent. And I'm sure that's, it's because it's a group meditation, and because you do it in groups of 3 people or more, the potency of the energies, how strong they are, and the types of energies that can be sent through our chakras are different than if you're meditating alone. And that's not to say that solo meditation is not a good thing as well. Of course it is, because you develop different types of qualities and you train yourself in a different way when you're meditating alone. But this group meditation is an extremely serendipitous kind of combination of benefit to yourself and helping the world. So it's kind of why wouldn't you want to do it?
Yeah, it's the beauty of it. You can mix service and meditation together, and working in cooperation with the masters as well, of course. So tremendous opportunity there.
And the technique is very simple. As we were saying, you must be 3 people. That's the minimum number, because it's based on the science of triangles. However, the technique is so simple, it couldn't be simpler. We say together this invocation called the Great Invocation. And this is a way of alerting the masters to the fact that our group is ready to meditate. And we're calling for these energies, we're invoking them. And then each of us sits and focuses our attention on this spot between the eyebrows, which is where the Ajna chakra is, one of the 7 main chakras or major chakras. And we simply maintain our attention here at this point. Some people will feel energies flowing through their chakras when the meditation begins. Others won't. But whether you feel energies or not doesn't mean that the energies aren't there and that they're not flowing. It depends on people's sensitivity and different body types. People have different types of bodies. So your sensory apparatus is not everybody has the same one. And so you just maintain your attention here. If you notice your attention has wandered, which it will, then you simply say Om mentally, not with your voice, but mentally, and that will bring your attention back to this spot. And that's all you have to do, in fact. Yep. We are told not to send the energies ourselves. We're not meant to be focusing on groups or people or places. The masters do that. They know where energies are needed or where energies need to be pulled away. So it's best if we leave it to them. They are master scientists in this respect.
And that's it.
Yeah,
Pretty
just
simple.
I think John will put in the chat. He'll put links for the Zoom meditation groups that Tim was mentioning, where if people want to connect now during the pandemic, or from far away, somewhere where you can't reach out to local people who are interested, you can connect and do this meditation on a regular basis. There are at least 3 different Zoom groups doing this. So every week you have the opportunity to meditate with them if you'd like to.
So we're going to do a 30-minute meditation now. And you can, of course, join us for the whole time. You can go after as well. If you feel you're in the zone and would like to continue, feel free and we'll sign off. And of course, if you want to sign off early, that's fine too. Hope you enjoy it. So we'll say the great invocation. And again, focus the attention here, the Ajna center. If the attention drops, think the word Om, comes back up. Okay. I'll set the timer. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center, which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. And that was transmission meditation. Hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you, everyone, for being here today. We'll be doing part 2 in 3 weeks because next week we'll be back with Dick Larson. And the following week is a webinar by Share International Live. So we'll be back with part 2 of this show in 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
And we'll continue the conversation.
We hope to see you next week when we have Dick Larson on. Hope you can join us.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.